record, and we'll go ahead and do introductions. Felix.
Felix Rivera.
Unmuted.
Karen Baronga.
Anna Brawley.
Dan Volan just walked into the room. Meg Zalatel. Mr. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Mr. Martinez.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and kick off with a budget and advisory commission update. I believe Mr. Harvey is on the phone. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, this is Matthew Harvey, Chair of the Budget Advisory Commission.
Great. Would you like to give us a brief update of what you all have been up to?
Yeah, absolutely. And just making sure if you guys can hear me okay, if I need to speak louder or softer, just let me know.
Pretty good. Thanks.
Perfect. So I'm going to be a little bit brief, but it is good to have an update. I'll start off with membership. We currently have 9 out of 11 seats filled on the Budget Advisory Commission, which is really great. I know the last time that I spoke to the members, we were struggling a little bit with membership, but we added 2 members in October and 2 members, I believe, in February. So I really appreciate the Assembly's support in helping to fill the commission. It's been really nice not having to struggle as hard to make quorum. And along with that, we had Aaron Baker, the commission staff, support leave OMB. So for a few months, we struggled just a little bit with logistics and coordination. But Amanda Moser joined OMB and is helping to support the commission now. And she's been great. This has really helped the commission get back up on step with regards to our normal meeting cadence and what we wanted to do as commission members. And to that note, the BAC members really wanted to dig into the sales tax proposal, offer resolutions related to the proposal, both generally and with regards to the specifics of the sponsor substitute versions that were most recently discussed. And so with the logistics issue, Amanda Moser was really great about helping us to have a special meeting and get back to being able to work on those resolutions. So we were maybe just a little bit slow with our first resolution, but we did 2 of them. One of them was, as mentioned, general and more with regards to sales tax guidance for assembly deliberations, recommendations for voter-facing information if an ordinance was to pass, and policy accompaniments and general recommendations. And then at a recent special meeting, we also passed one that was related to the SA version that I know was postponed by Assembly members. But so I'm not sure if that one ever got transmitted, but we passed those 2 resolutions, and that was really the bulk of our focus over the last couple of months, was getting back up on step administratively and with regards to the logistics of the commission, and then those 2 resolutions. And so next, we have a regular meeting next week, and at that meeting, we'll be hearing from OMB regarding 1Q budget revisions. And I know that was kind of our plan, was to not submit a resolution related to the initially passed budget, but wait for the 1Q budget revisions, at which point we'd have a little bit better idea of updates, and we plan to submit a resolution related to those. I know that there's a few of the other BAC members had some thoughts about even another resolution or a letter related to sales tax proposal and kind of the status of postponement. So I wanted, at our next meeting, we're going to have an open discussion about the direction that we want to take the commission, and what members want to discuss what officially or unofficially through resolutions or letters. But outside of that, we also are, since we're starting to fill up the commission seats again, we're going to try to reinstate an effort that we tried to do a few years ago, but as we lost membership, we stopped doing it, and it's department assignments for BAC members. So at our next meeting, we'll discuss assigning each BAC member to probably 3 departments, each one major one, and then a few of the smaller departments. And they'll go and meet with the department heads and get an understanding of how the budget and operations tie into each other. And then possibly, if they want to, as the BAC member assigned to a department, issue either a letter or bring a resolution draft to the commission. So those are kind of our main things is the resolutions related to the sales tax proposal, where we want to go next, probably at least with 1Q budget revisions recommendations, and possibly more depending on commission members. And then the third is the department meetings. But I appreciate you guys having me here today.
Thanks, Mr. Harvey. A couple of questions for you. First, Ms. Brawley, then Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, these are really good updates. I'm glad you guys are continuing your work. We did get both of those resolutions, so I'll just confirm that in the record. And I'm glad you guys are doing the department assignments. I think when I was on BAC, they were very valuable. So best of luck, and I know you guys will learn a lot. My question is, or really request, is I am very interested in pursuing some changes to the bed tax, not so much with an idea of exactly what it should be, but I think that we can put that on the agenda, or I'm sorry, on the ballot for April 2026. So I would love to just put that out there for you guys to think about. I know one of your members made a presentation about a year ago on bed tax. It was specific to one piece of it, I think, but it's something to think about. It's kind of imagining what we could use that revenue for, what the right mix of that would be. And so I just want to suggest that at a future meeting, you guys consider taking that up. And I'm not coming with a specific proposal for you to respond to. I'm just saying that I think we should do that. So just something to think about. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the recommendation. Sorry, may I respond real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this has gotten brought up before, and just as a clarifying question, I'll bring it up in the open discussion that we have on our agenda next week. But just as a clarifying question, it's more generally, it would be what we would be looking at is the revenue and what it's used for, and the structure more generally. Because we issued a resolution, but it was a little bit more specific and related to the convention center trust uses and things like that. It was a little bit more specific, but more generally the bed tax.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it as an open conversation and just imagining what we could do and then getting down to what, and ultimately what the community decides we should do.
Okay, great.
Right, thank you. Note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Constant on the phone. Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to echo comments from Member Brawley around the second resolution, and just want to thank the Commission for its efforts and scrutinizing and going into some good detail regarding the sales tax proposal. As one of the sponsors, I did find your input particularly helpful. So encourage you all to engage early and often in those types of proposals moving into the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rivera. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Harvey, and we look forward to continued engagement by the BAC. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, to the MOA Trust Fund Board. We have Mr. Slivka with us.
Yeah, this is Alex Slivka, and I'm today joined by Jeff Sins, who is the vice chair of the board. We're going to save most of our comments we're further on down the agenda on the AO, but just to say that the trust board continues to meet and the trust continues to perform in line with the market. And I'll see if there are any questions there.
Any questions? I think most of them will come with the other item. So, all right.
You know what? I do, Ms. Galto, I have a quick question.
Yep, go for it.
Thanks. This is Mr. Constant. So since we just briefly had a talk about the sales tax conversation, did your board have an opportunity to talk about the proposal that was presented under the sales tax rubric to use the trust as a basis for funding projects?
Through the chair, we did not have that chance. It got pulled before we had that conversation. I would say, just as a personal observation, that as long as the amounts of money that were loaned, that there was a competitive interest rate so that the trust was not hampered in terms of its return. It seems like something that could happen, but that's my opinion and not the board as a whole.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, should it come up again, I suggest maybe taking a close look because I think you might be asked to weigh in on it. All right, we're going to turn to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. Ms. Browse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for having me here today. I'm very excited to talk about the budget. We're going into our 1Q revisions, and I think we are set for speaking specifically about the 1Q revision process later on in the meeting. But if there are specific questions that I can answer just about OMB activities, let me know. And also, we have presented the 2024 year-end budget to actuals in front of you. That's what's on the, will be part of the presentation, and we can walk through some of those as well.
All right. So any questions to kick off a conversation about this from OMB? Or if we want to wait and just have a more fulsome 1Q conversation, we can certainly do that as well. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, thanks. I think just top level, looking at the budget to actuals, if you could explain what the bold lines are,
Yes.
and then just in general, kind of what's the punchline. You know, I'm going to the end and it looks like we're almost, or we're a little bit underspent. So maybe just kind of walking through what this means now that we know where we ended in 2024.
Yes, through the chair to Member Brawley. And the rest of the assembly, if you look at the bottom of the page, there's a note that says that the general government budget to actuals is in draft form. And part of that is because while we're still moving through 2024 year-end accounting close, that those numbers may move around depending on how they are currently allocated. There usually aren't huge swings, but you know, we don't know what we don't know until we get into it. So these are in draft form for the time being. And also you'll notice that in column 3, there's a lot of letters that don't actually make words. And those are supplemental notes that you would normally see at the bottom of the page. But because the supplemental notes are so numerous for 2024, they take up a whole other page, and we have not had the opportunity to fully vet the accuracy of those supplemental transactions in and out. So the budget to actuals that we'll present at the 17th meeting in 2 weeks should have those verified so that we know what all of them are and that they are accurate. The 3 departments that are running overages for 2024 include the Chief Fiscal Officer, which is a very small budget, and I believe it holds 2 people. Yeah, 2 positions is the extent of that budget with a little bit of non-labor. And the overage in that department is specific to the introduction or reintroduction of the Chief Administrative Officer position at mid-year. So that was housed in the Chief Finance or the Chief Fiscal Officer position because of its structural proximity where it landed in the org chart. So to be clear that that change occurred, it stayed in the small department where it should, but shows a large overage there. The 34.357, $34,000 overage in the mayor's office is actually going to disappear because there is a credit that needs to be moved from invoices that were paid in 2024, but the credit was accrued in 2025. So once we move that back, that should balance out pretty well. And the municipal manager, which has the largest overage, is specifically attributed to a workers' comp general liability settlement payout. And if you turn to the next page, which is the labor, non-labor page, you'll see in the muni manager line, which is about halfway down, that the overage in the non-labor category is 1.9 million, and that's part of that settlement payout. So when you put those 2 numbers together, you can see how that is being attributed within the municipal manager's department. And you can see that it's a slightly outside of the budgeted amount for the workers' comp and general liability accounts within risk.
So I have a question. The overtime.
Yes.
The overtime seems wild.
Wild. It's wild.
20% overall. A lot
It's
of departments.
wild.
The wild was the first word I could come up with when I
I
see
had that same thing when I looked at it.
percentages like 318%, 229%. So, and this is for December 31 through April 2nd. So what's going on?
Well, no, it's for all of 2024, but the report was pulled on April 2nd.
Okay, so in 2024, what was going
Yeah.
on?
Well, but so when I looked at this, I thought, wow, this is intense. But part of the significance of the overtime numbers is because the budgeted overtime is very small in most of these departments. And the overtime is most directly attributable to vacancies. And aside from specific departments that had to run particularly heavy in overtime, like transit had to run overtime very heavy compared to previous years because of their staffing challenges and their vacancy rates associated with pay and retention. And so those improvements, I think, have been made or are being made. So we don't expect that number in public transportation to occur ever again. And the Parks and Rec number, as far as I know, that's also attributable to seasonal employees and vacancies. Let's see.
So one question I had is some of these departments don't really have represented staff. And so talk to me a little bit about how salaried versus non-salaried, how do we attribute overtime in that, like, right, like the municipal attorney's office or the municipal manager's office? Are those just extra hours worked, but because there isn't always a cost associated through, I see on the spreadsheet.
Yes, and I think one of the things that we can do when we dive into the final version of these is to make sure that we know where all of the specific overages come from in the overtime buckets. If labor moves back and forth at all during accounting close, then there is the potential that these overtime numbers will change. The municipal manager does actually have represented staff in terms of covering the offices of OEM and TI is just one position, risk, and I think that's the only one that they had last year. But that's a good question in terms of whether or not there is any executive OT, but non-reps who are not represented by a union but not executives do accrue OT. And they are hourly, I think they're all hourly compensation. And so when non-reps, particularly the departments in accounting, even OMB, when there's additional work that needs to be done by the non-rep employees, then OT does get accrued in those departments.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, be interested to see how this shakes out as we get to 1Q. And then I did notice, I want to call out, I think it's good news. Fire is not that far over. Hey. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Branca.
I just was looking at the information technology, the third column over. That's a big number, 29,041%. But then when you go all the way over, it says 75%. So I'm not sure.
You're on the overtime or on the
Yeah, the
overtime report?
actuals percent difference, 23 versus 24. It was actually 29,041% difference between
yeah.
overtime 23 and 24.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I
wow.
think that is the difference between 23 and 24. And so potentially the former acting IT director would be able to answer that question directly. But I think that may be specific to a project and we can figure out exactly what that jump is part of, but it also could be attributable to vacancy factor.
Mr. Constant. Chris, you in the queue? Okay, well, maybe you'll jump back in. Any other questions on, yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, my question is about the alcohol tax budget to actual. So I'll just check if you're going to report on that or we can come back to it. But
We absolutely can go through this. I know that there was a more extensive report at Housing and Homelessness Committee yesterday. the sort of breakout of the spend on the 2024 alcohol tax is, there's a very long PowerPoint presentation that includes breakouts of all of the expenditures by department, if people are interested in reviewing that. One of the interesting things about the alcohol tax, as you know, is that there has been multiple years of sort of rollover activity. And so cleaning up the carryover amount and understanding exactly what the fund balance of the account is a little tricky. But some of these numbers are probably likely to change depending on in and out with accounting. There are a handful of significant lapse balances, or appear to be significant lapse balances, particularly, in the middle of the page, if you look at the modular units as transitional shelters. But that dollar amount, existed at the end of 2024, but the Assembly reappropriated that to continue the program. And so that will show up in the 2025 presentation as a continuing cost. So that has already been reappropriated within the fund. Some of the other program operation line items attributable to health and the municipal attorney have remaining balances there. And I think that some of that has to do with payroll allocations, but most particularly vacancy factor within the health department. We are doing an assessment of some of those program operation lines to, one, determine how long they have been within the tax. I think most of them have been there since the beginning of the tax and were specifically to fund positions to do the work in those categories. And it's my understanding that the goal of these kinds of funding choices should eventually be operationalized. So we'll be looking at whether or not we can pull those out of the alcohol tax into the general government budget. Let's see, what are the other large ones? The Safety Center Community Patrol overage, that I think we need to ask some questions to the health department to see what that was, but it may have just been over budgeted. The behavioral health case management, I think, was specific to challenges for tracking within the health department, so we can look at that as well. But some of these you'll see as reappropriations in the 1Q budget presentation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and we can come back to that. I think what I'm interested in knowing, and you can answer it later, is roughly speaking, do we anticipate any fund balance? Because I think in the past, that's been where a lot of the action has been as far as our Assembly amendments too. But we know that this is a new year. And so so just to make sure we come back to that, but just to flag for members, we are not anticipating millions of dollars of fund balance the way that we have and have been able to make choices. The other question I had specifically, or just to flag, I remember this time last year with your predecessor, I mentioned looking at the police program operations, and I'm seeing they are the only ones that have gone above 100%. And I will continue to hold the line that I believe alcohol tax is not like general government. It is a fixed amount and you cannot go over that amount unless it is appropriated. So I would ask that 5,000 be moved back into general government because this department is the only one that's done that. And I think it was just an accounting issue.
Correct.
So it's not intentional, but it's not fair to pull more money out of this when other places don't get more. And so that's where I think we just have to hold the line. And I think we'll have to hold the line with the marijuana money as well. But just to flag that. So again, I'm not assuming they were doing it intentionally, but for whatever reason, that shows up as more than 100, and that happened last year. So for that one, I'd like that fixed.
And through the chair, OMB agrees with you.
Ms. Bronga?
I had this question from a constituent that we had a very light snow year. And so it seems like there would be a lot of plowing money that might be available
Yeah.
for potholes and such. But what happens with that excess?
Determining whether or not there is an actual excess is the first question. And that's one of our questions as well, to determine what the costs associated with the first half of the year. Depending on how you want to, make bets, it's not great because we still have another half of a year to go through with snowfall that may impact that. And so we are looking at the analysis of whether or not there are fuel savings associated or any staffing needs associated. I think that the most significant impact will be that less snow means less overtime. And so the overtime costs associated with multiple plow-outs would not have to be covered by the budget. So making that analysis is something that we're working on.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd asked the same question of the municipal manager, and she said it was surprising how much personnel and equipment it still took to deal with ice. So if it's not one thing, it's another. All right. So that was through, I mean, we just handled 2024 budget to actuals. So we'll just keep on trucking. And my hope is to turn to the new items on the agenda in no less than 10 minutes. So they have these next three. Building safety service area.
Uh,
Go.
As a standing item, the BSSA, so we have there's 3 funds in deficit within the municipality. The BSSA, the Workers' Comp GL, and the Info Tech account. They're in varying degrees of deficit. Many are long-term accrual deficits over 10 plus years. The BSSA is one of those. And 2 years ago, I believe the Assembly put BSSA recovery into the tax cap calculation 1 year. This is the second year, 25 is the second year. And that has helped decrease the growth of that deficit. It has not recovered the deficit entirely, but part of the focus of the administration and this first quarter budget revision is to determine whether or not there is a specific plan that can be presented to the Assembly to approve that the recovery of the BSSA has a trajectory and that we know when it will be likely fully complete. And that can be sort of a pathway for us to acknowledge that we're going to get to the place that we need to go so that we're no longer operating in deficit with the BSSA. I think that that provides a lot of potential flexibility for the department and building homes and the permit activity generally. The BSSA allocation right now in the 1Q budget proposal is not set to change outside of what was already proposed in the 2025 budget.
Thank you for that update. I would just suggest that the staff that are typically paid under the BSSA were paid using general funds when we did run a deficit. So if we, in fact, find a way to close that deficit, we probably need to be paying ourselves back because they were already handled. So, and that always becomes a policy choice on whether or not to fill that BSSA deficit at 1Q or to continue to chip away at it. All right. FEMA and ARPA funding reports and closeout. Is there anything to report there?
Very quickly, the FEMA closeouts are going well. As part of, I don't know how much of this I'm supposed to, spoil the surprise on, but the 1Q budget proposal is projected to include 2 emergency closeouts, the first being the Highland avalanche and the other being the COVID emergency. We have gone through auditing of all of the paperwork in the FEMA recovery, and right now the balance that the municipality has to recover to become whole on the COVID pandemic is $1.1 million, and the Highland avalanche is $35,000. So once those 2 are closed out, then those FEMA activities will be gone off the books and will no longer have to be part of accounting's processing for the ACFR, et cetera, et cetera. I believe we are working towards closing out the earthquake this summer and intend to make 2026 proposed budget the year that we recover for the earthquake. And any remaining emergencies that we have open that are eligible to be closed would also be ideally closed in the 2026 proposed budget so that we have been able to wipe out all of the existing emergencies from the last 6 years and sort of get back to normal financial operations, or closer to anyway. The ARPA program is also closing out effectively this year, and that's going well. The spend for the municipal entities is almost complete, but we'll certainly get there by the deadline that we need to based on the reports from the departments. And the contractor on the public side for the ARPA grants is continuing to do the reporting, and that I think is going well. So ARPA is smooth as far as I know.
All right. And MLMP, you're on a roll.
We don't own them.
Okay, great. Check. All right. Yeah, we figure if there's anything more for the MLMP closeout, you will just bring it when it needs to be there. That's why
Yes.
we have a standing list. All right. So, first quarter budget revisions and trust manager definition. I'm actually going to flip these unless there's any objection, just so 1Q will maybe extend itself a little bit longer. So Mr. Slivka, can you tell us why there's this recommendation that we do a trust manager definitional change and why that helps the operations of the trust board?
Yes, I can, if I can get this thing launched. Sweet. So page up, page down. Okay. Again, thanks for having us here. And just as a reminder for those of you that have not met Jeff Sins as our vice chair, Jeff was served as CFO back around the 2010, 2012 arena, and is the one that's personally responsible for setting up the cash pool as we know it today, which has had a benefit to the municipality of well in excess of $70 million. So we live and breathe Jeff's brain power. So thanks, Jeff. What I have on the board here is just, we're going to walk quickly through the structure so you can understand it and then why we're asking for this change. So the structure is a three-part where you have a board of trustees made up of, that has now fiduciary responsibility. It's made up of people very much informed and has a long background in the institutional asset management business. It is supported, designed to be supported by a trust manager who is staff of the municipality and who similarly has an extensive institutional investment background. And then we are also supported by a third-party investment consultant who helps provide data information and informs our decision-making. So what are we trying to do here? Really, when you think about the code as it was designed, it was written in 23 with two very specific people in mind. Dan Moore was treasurer, Glenn was deputy treasurer, and the code was actually written with those people in mind. And what we're trying to do quite simply is just make it so it's going to be people agnostic going forward, and also that the role of the trust manager will sit in the CFO's office. We don't expect it increases our cost at all. I'm pretty sure it's going to be neutral to the municipality, but we will talk about that in terms of.
So there was a C attached or statement of economic effect for $212,000.
Correct. And
per
so
year.
I think what we're trying to say is that statement of economic effect might not have been completely accurate. It doesn't. So from the trust standpoint, and I will forward to the page. So the history of, the trust has paid IGCs in this amount. We expect the amount that is budgeted for 2025 will be that same amount, and similar to that going forward. What's going to change is that what the trust was being billed in terms of IGCs here. You can see 40% of the treasurer's time, 40% of the deputy treasurer's time, and 40% of the admin officer's time. So on a go-forward basis, the IGCs that are going to be billed are pretty much going to be 100% of the trust manager's time and 25% of the admin officer's time. We expect those to be fairly similar. And so what I think you'll see is that IGCs that had been paid out of Treasury now are going to be paid out of the CFO's office. But I might defer to Ona, who does the IGC calculator.
To answer the question, there is an impact to general government because right now those IGCs are going to those positions, and removing them from those positions means that general government needs to cover those costs. So it's not an impact to the trust because they are moving their money from one place to another, but it does impact general government.
Thanks. And so to continue, and so why are we doing this? We're doing this so that, this position can sit more properly with the CFO's office, and that as a go forward, it's not going to depend explicitly on who is in the deputy treasurer's role. We talked a little bit about what this was, the structure, where you can see prior to change in code, the treasurer was the sole fiduciary, supported in this manner. And then with the change in code, now you have a fiduciary board supported by the trust manager, and then continue to have some support by the junior admin, and again, the consultant. The cost of the consultant, fairly modest in the scheme when you think about our budget, is somewhere over $2 million. And so this is what has been both proposed by the CFO and accepted by the board of trustees of the trust, where we're paying 100% of the salary of the municipal employee who is in this role of, we title it Director of Investment Operations. And then as well, you can see the cost for the admin officer. And so going to this, the trust manager, like we said, a municipal employee, just to put it in perspective, the cost of this support is very low, 5 basis points in the scheme of things. I think our total cost of management across all the fees that we pay is somewhere around 50 basis points. So we are really respectfully asking that this code change be approved. It'll allow this position to be filled and will allow the board really to be supported with a trust manager who has the institutional knowledge that we need to support us in our oversight. And I'll stop there.
So I do have a question, and this will show my ignorance pretty quickly, but what exactly is this person going to do for $212,000 that we aren't getting from our external advisement? Like, how is it going to help the trust board? Like, functionally, what is this job?
So if you think about it, you have police and fire, right? It's a $200+ million. They have a person who is in that exact same role. Their role is to make sure that both on a day-to-day basis, that the policies are being followed, but more importantly, that they are looking down the road in terms of, what is our asset management structure? Is it the best structure we could have? One of the things that stands out, this is a $440 million trust, which has literally, as a long-term endowment, 0 illiquid private investments. Many of you are aware that I serve in a similar role at the University of Alaska Foundation, where our $500 million endowment, 25% of that is in non-public illiquid investments. And that exposure is almost completely responsible for our relative outperformance. So by not having a person in place that can monitor, take care of those contracts, work to support the board in terms of sourcing out new investment ideas, giving up significant returns for the municipality, really is what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I'm just not well versed in trust management. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, one is just to get intent really clear on the record. The intent with this deputy trust manager position is not that it would be a contractor, that it would be an employee. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And I don't know if it's worth making sure that that's in the code, because I know this is a small change to the overall code, but just a note. We wouldn't want 10, 20 years from now, somebody to just contract this out, I think. So I'm just noting if there's a reason to change it, or I'll go back and look at it. And then my other question is, so this is on our agenda for Tuesday, the 8th. Are you all, or is the administration going to put forward a substitute version of this, or if there's errors in what's there, does it need to be changed, or is this just
A
explained?
substitute in
Okay.
the statement of economic impact.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to track, because you're explaining what's in it, but it sounds like it's not.
There's
errors.
not a substitute provision I'm aware proposal to change what has been submitted in terms of code changes. If there's, I would have to work with the CFO to see if there's needs to be some update to the statement of economic impact. or
Yeah.
economic effects.
And I guess that's what I was wondering. It sounds like you're just unpacking what it means, not that it's inaccurate. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
One more question, since Una's still here, where's the $212,000 coming from? We didn't budget it, so is it something we'll just take care of in one queue? Should this pass?
Through the chair, we've been working with the CFO and Treasury to determine what the actual appropriate IGC split is for those other, previous services that the trust is changing. And I think, no, they are not incorporated as of right now because the action has not been taken by the Assembly. But if we need to change them as part of 1Q revisions and you pass it on the 8th, then we would be able to incorporate some changes before the 22nd.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any other questions? Manager item? All right, well, speaking of 1Q, thank you, Mr. Zupka, thank you, Mr. Sims. First quarter budget revisions, preview and assembly process. So wanted to use this opportunity. We know we will soon be seeing 1Q from the administration. Wanted to give any members the opportunity, if you have a high priority and you just kind of want to get it out there even before we get into the formal process. Our calendar has a week from Friday, the work session and the presentation of 1Q, and then the following Friday for amendments. But it's always good when we are all in a place together and publicly noticed. If there's some high priority you have or something you want to let the administration know about, now would be the time. And then after we get 1Q and we see it, Anna and I will just send an email with kind of how we hope to handle amendments. But we don't want to jump over actually seeing what the proposal from the administration is. So with that, open the floor if anybody has anything I want to throw out there. I have nothing right now. Yeah, go ahead, Felix.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess I'll put two items out there. One of them was discussed at a prior Rules Committee meeting that I wasn't able to attend, but the clerk put it into the record, and one of them is relatively new. So I think as folks know, there was a strong commitment to continue the sort of fiscal situation discussion, and that particular discussion has the possibility to be a very impactful one, but also a very consuming one. And I want to make sure that we have the appropriate resources to have that discussion in a meaningful way. And to me, that means bringing on additional resources to do that. Local, and just to be very specific, local contracted resources to do that. So that will likely be some level of budget amendment. Second one is, as was previewed at the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting yesterday, on April 8th at our next assembly meeting, we will be looking at a resolution to possibly create a task force surrounding reimagining of the Public Safety Advisory Commission. And this is framed very similar to prior task forces that I have helped to create. And with those prior task forces, those did have some amount of facilitation support to ensure that they were able to achieve the work and produce professional results. And so that will likely be some small level of a request, just a comparative analysis. The prior task forces was two task forces in 2023 were $25,000 each for facilitation. So that's, I think, a fair starting point for this task force would be a $25,000 request. Maybe I'll have some other big dollar asks. Who knows? That's it.
Thanks. Mr. Vera, my apologies too on our ongoing business or maybe it's legislative and budget priorities. We'll have it for the next meeting. There'll be a C, which will just be the ongoing fiscal conversation because we did say we would have that as part of our agenda. This is a little bit of a late meeting and then we'll have another one in April. So it'll be on there for that. Go ahead, Karen, and then I'll get Ann after that. Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks. So I had 100,000 in for the ARCH program, which I believe is going to end up in the mayor's budget. And then I also put in 85,000, which I have been told is the cost of a caretaker one for Parks and Recreation, an unfilled position that we would instead use that amount as a pilot program to do day labor from the shelters. I had a conversation with the mayor and Farina, and we were thinking maybe 50,000, just some amount to get started on it, putting out an RFP for operators that can support vet and supply workers. And then the last, and I don't know the exact amount, I threw out 300,000 to reduce the municipality of Anchorage fees charged to ASD for pool and rink use to help allow swim and dive and hockey programs to continue. And I also talked with the mayor about that, and there was a possibility, there's a different rate schedule between what we charge ASD and what we charge the public. So in some way, bringing down those fees. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Got them down. Anna.
Yeah, and I asked Mr. Rivera to stay because so I've been working on this kind of fiscal future idea similar and spoke with OMB and we haven't fleshed it all out yet, but I think there's some opportunity that we may not need. We may not need an additional appropriation. There may be money there, so we're trying to figure that out. But I'm very interested in that as well and what it would look like. So sorry to make you stay longer, but that was all. Just didn't want you to miss it. And also Ona's tracking that, so thanks.
And Dan.
Thank you. I don't have a specific amount in mind, but just one of my priorities will be wanting to make sure that there's a smooth transition for the Mountain View Community Center. And I know that we've recently had some appropriations for that. But I think the intent is to turn that over at the end of May. So we want to make sure that we're really ready to go live with that. Thanks.
And through the chair to Member Voland, that is absolutely in the 1Q budget revision. And we've had numerous meetings specifically about that transition to make sure that it is as smooth as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Myers, Mr. Martinez, just speak up if you do. You want to put anything out there? Okay, well, we'll have lots more opportunity to chat about that. Let's move on. Anything else you want to tell us about 1Q? I mean, you get a show in like a week. Okay, you're good. Okay. All right. Legislative priorities, anything we want to bring up? I think we kind of talked about our big one yesterday when we passed the school board's budget. So, all right. Budget items for 2025, we just talked about that. And then moving forward, C on this will be just, we can just call it, Matt, we can just call it ongoing fiscal conversation as a standing item. All right. Audience participation. Would anyone like to participate? Anyone at all? Okay, we will let everyone get 13 minutes back of their time. We're adjourned.